setting the foundation on in anything, but on brass instrument, is of utmost importance. I think, for instance, sometimes I pick the instrument up in the morning and I feel like I already know I'm warmed up. I maybe played the night before, it's going to be okay. Or maybe I pick it up and I can just tell by the way my lips feel that things aren't going to be functioning. So there's a couple of ways I could fix that. I could, if I'm feeling okay, I'll be fine. If I'm not feeling okay, I could force it, you know. But what I like to do is I like to do the same thing every day, just so I can build some consistency, no matter how it feels. Just like a runner, you know, would never, even if they're feeling pretty limber in the morning, they would never just get up and run as fast as they could run. They would stretch and do all these things. And maybe it would work for one day, but then the next day they're going to be sore and they're going to have problems and not perform as well. And so the consistency is like this. On the trumpet, you know, the consistency is like this, and on the French horn, because the mouthpiece is small this way, so there's less room for error than on the trombone or the tuba. They have their issues as well, you know, but anything wrong in here, the slightest, it's like you have to find the bullseye. If you miss, it's out of tune or you miss the note. So we're trying to find this sweet spot in here. So in the morning, I like to just take one note. I take a written G on the trumpet, and the first thing I do is I test to make sure I can make that note respond, to make the reed, or lips, which is the reed, respond without any force or without any use of the tongue. I hear young musicians play and they go, bah, you know, first thing, bah, and that's fine, but you're not setting a very good foundation. You're setting the foundation of I have to force to make the sound. So you do this every day, and then eventually the only way you can make the sound is by force. So, and that was me when I was young as well, you know. So now I would take the G, and I would just test. You know, I haven't played hardly at all today here. It's very cold outside here too, the instrument's cold. And I'm just going to see how that note feels with no tongue, see if I can make it respond at a soft volume. That's kind of the sound of the harbor here. You hear the lighthouse horn, you know. So that doesn't feel too bad. Like that's actually responding pretty good. Now, I wouldn't say I'm done though. I would do my routine from here anyway. And so what I like to do, I have a very simple thing to set the foundation. I start with G, and G is like home for me. I look at home, and so I want to make my home nice and clean and clear. Maybe someday I wake up and it's like this. I'm like, oh man, what's happening? You know, I have to fix that now. So I will play softly and keep playing that note over and over, adjusting the reed, the aperture here, until the note is clear. Or maybe I'm making an adjustment, maybe I have to make it smaller, you know, because when we play loud, this becomes very open. And so that can create problems, especially if we played loud for 4 hours the night before. Then the next morning we pick the horn up and we go, oh, you know, that's a problem, you know. So we make this smaller and we try to make, so I've got G set, I've got G nice and clear. Now I go to the neighbor's house, which is G sharp, and I make sure that's the same. So I make sure those are the same, and they sound the same. And then I go to the other neighbor on the other side, which is the F sharp. Okay, and if those aren't happening, I keep playing them so they all sound the same. So everything's the same. And then I go further away from home. And so on, and I keep going like this, away from home, and if anything is bad, I fix it. I clear it. Maybe the sound is cloudy on one note, and it's got some turbulence in it, so I have to find the center of that sound. Usually when a note sounds funny, like sounds fuzzy, it's usually because we're not playing in the middle, like the middle of the bullseye of the note. If, like for instance, if I play a note and I'll play below the bullseye a little bit. When you find the middle, it's clarity. Up above, it gets fuzzy. So that's why we set this foundation. So we're looking for the middle of every note. So when we're playing a melody, we're going from this note to this note to this note. It's always in the middle. It's not hit this one, then this one high, and then this one low. Then this one sounds thinner, this one sounds cloudy, and so kind of sounds funny. You know, it'd be like if a singer sang a different volume on every note, it would sound funny. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't change the sound we want to make, but generally speaking. So I do that to set my foundation every day. It's the first thing I do. And then, now my bad days is not so much, you know, because a lot of things affect brass players. Affect our reed. When you think about a clarinet player or oboe player or a saxophone player, if the reed is not good, right, what do? They break the reed, they get a new reed, and then they shave it, they have a knife, you know, and they make the reed real perfect, and they moisturize it in water, and they get it nice and wet, and then they go, okay, this reed is better, right? Our reed is attached. So we have to fix it every day. We have to condition the reed every day. And we have to understand, you know, so if you don't do that, as you know, if the reed's not responding, you're not going to play well. So really, in a lot of ways, you know, we talk about, as brass players, we talk about air a lot, but the reed, if that's not functioning correctly, so the first thing I do is try to fix that to the best I can. It has to be wet too. So you see, when trumpet players play, you always see them, they put their tongue, they moisturize, because if it's dry, the air doesn't pass through as easily. And so I try to get all that happening. And then once that's fixed, then I go from G to low G to G on top of the staff, not high. I just try to fix all those notes. By the time I'm finished, I've solved a lot of problems. You know, now my foundation is pretty solid. I can move on to something else. The next thing I would do is now let me slur a little bit and see how my wind and stuff is responding to the air. I might do a simple bugle call just to see how the lips are responding to some flexibility things. And so on, and I will go through all 7 positions like that. And by the time I'm finished with that, even if maybe I'm a little stiff, maybe the first time I try it, it's like, oh man, that didn't respond very well. So I could play louder to fix that, or I could go back to the foundation and make this happen until it comes out easily. You know, so those notes move together very quickly and very easily, and thinking about bringing the notes close together. So the range of the instrument, you know, young musicians think of low C and double high C is way up here. And I think you have to think about it like this. Everything is closer together. The notes are closer together, it's going to be easier. On the piano, the keys aren't this big. They're just this big. The notes are very close together. So in our mind, I think we have to think about that. So after I do that, my lips will be pretty supple, and then I might, then I'll start tonguing some notes maybe. Make sure the front of the note is precise, you know, and maybe just some scales or. Or something, just making sure the front of the note's right. Maybe it's, if the reed is not responding well, it might be, we get these kind of sounds, you know, so we have to fix that. But it all stems back to the foundation of how this is responding. It's not a problem with the tongue. The tongue's in this, you know, the tongue does what it does, and it's the same tongue every day. There's not a different one in there. But this changes from day to day. From the weather, maybe it's humid out, maybe it's dry out, maybe you're at a high altitude, maybe you don't feel well. All those things affect this, so that's why we have to condition it. Just like a woodwind player has to condition the reed, we do that every day. And then usually then, you know, I will maybe touch on the upper register a little bit, just to see if, you know, I don't want to practice up there because it's hard, but I want to touch just to make sure I know what it feels like. I'll touch on a high C to make sure I can play that note easily. Some days it's, oh, that's not good. I could play it louder, but I'm going to fix the problem, and I'm going to find the position that the lips need to be in to play that note with elegance, and without force, which I think is the most important. The less force we can put into this, the better it's going to sound. So anyway, understanding how to set the foundation and how to make this reed respond properly, the aperture, which is the space the air passes through the lips, becomes one of the most important things. Like I said earlier, we talked about air and stuff, which is really important, but it's how we use that air. And this space designates the kind of sound we're going to make. And so you think about how important that is. So when we're playing loud, this space is bigger. Like the aperture is the volume control, right? So if we're going to play loud, this is pretty open. We're going to play soft. If I try to play soft with this big space, I get nothing. I have to make this smaller, right, to make this. So understanding how that works is an integral part of the foundation. I always try to make this the most elegant place to start with. Soft volume, quick response, like a good violin bow, to make the sound. They don't have to pull too hard. We don't want to force. There's already going to be enough force. So as easy as we can make this. I wish I would have learned this when I was younger, because I played with a lot of force. I have a scar. I used to cut my lip all the time. I was pushing very hard and creating a lot of problems for myself. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm very careful about how I set myself up every day. And so most of my days are consistent. It doesn't mean I don't have bad days. We all have bad days. We can't hit a home run every time we're up. We do our best, and we try to be consistent. And so setting that foundation, I think, is the solution for consistency.